Today's conversation is with Zo Ajani. Zo is currently living and working in India as a certified Rolfer and certified Ayurvedic wellness consultant, combining Rolfing with traditional Ayurveda therapies and protocols. Zo and I actually spoke last week for the true first time, and like a dream, it was a flawless, near perfect conversation. After we finished, I noticed that I accidentally forgot to record the talk. Whoops. I'm grateful that Zo's first comment was, "That's okay, bud," and he suggested we do it again soon. Ever so gracious with his time and with his learnings, Zo is a true educator and one who loves to share his knowledge and his heart. We'll speak a little bit about that first podcast, about beginner's mind, presence, and not having expectations, of Rolfing, Ayurveda, and what it's like to work as a body worker in a foreign country. Mostly, we'll laugh and share a conversation about what we're both so passionate about.
Hey, man.
What's up?
So familiar. Wow. How are you doing today?
I'm doing pretty good. It's kind of cloudy, so which is nice because it's been really hot for the past 2 days.
You got that nice, beautiful mango tree behind you.
This one is this is a neem tree. This place is full of God knows how many neem trees. It's very abundant, so it's easy to take care of your immune system here. You just pick a leaf or two and you're good to go for the day.
Nice. I saw a beautiful video of you climbing that mango tree. That was lovely.
Abigail, so we usually get vegetables, but we wanted to get some mangoes because we use raw mangoes for veggies. And so we had to climb the tree because the elephants can't go up that high. So there were so many up there. So that's why it was fun. I was a little scared when I got all the way to the top.
Yeah, it was high. I was like, wow, I don't know if I'd want to be going up there. It's not the going up that I'm worried about. It's the coming down.
Yeah.
And how fast.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's going to be really fun today because for me, I really want to try to forget everything we said in a way and not to have the way of how do you and there's something really interesting in this. How do you keep it fresh? I almost feel like there's a deeper meaning behind that, right? Like how do you have a beginner's mind? How do you have the same conversation again without having the same conversation again? And of course it won't be the same conversation.
Yeah, it's you don't have expectations of what's going to happen, right? This term, keeping it fresh, being fresh, and it has something to do with Rolfing, actually. And when the time comes, I can bring it up and we can talk more about it. But fresh is just the ability to, and I hate using this word. I don't want to say hate, but using that present, being present is keeping it fresh. But it's much more than that. It's you're aware of your surroundings and you're able to keep it fresh. Instead of saying these elusive words like presence and present, we really don't know what that means. To be honest with you, we can say I'm present, but are you really? Are you really present?
Yeah.
But it's so simple if you say it like this, I'm aware of my environment. I'm aware of where I'm sitting. I know what the air feels like. I can feel the clothes on my skin. I can feel the parchness in my throat. I can feel the wind blowing in my eyes and I have to blink. Really, being fresh is just a state of, are you aware of where you are? That's it. And then we can start putting subjective terms like presence and here and now and terms that.
Yeah, I think that they're different. I think of it sort of as layers, right? Presence is a layer to bringing you to awareness. Great, and then you have little a and big A. So there's or which can be, and I think of awareness and consciousness essentially having a almost interchangeable form, right? So there's greater consciousness, of which there's the universe and all that sort of stuff. And there's little c, which is like, what are you conscious of? And there will be a merge between them. I don't know if you know the name of the podcast.
No, what's the name of the podcast? What did you put on there?
The name of the podcast is Touching into Presence. So when you started talking about presence, yeah. And it took a while to get that name because I really wanted, I had a few people I was working with because I wanted to get out of my own blind spots. And instead of it took its form to get there. Someone came up with a beautiful name, Touching Potential. But I really wanted 3 words. I felt like 3 is a nice thing. And I think touching into presence is really nice because it's a lot of what body work is. You can say, well, what is touching into presence? You can spin those words in different ways. When we're touching people, we're touching into the presence of what that person is aware of, or sensory awareness. You're having light touch. You're touching into a conversation. That conversation, like, hey, right now this podcast is a touch into presence. I'm touching into your presence of what's happening in India, and you're touching into my presence of what's happening outside of Boston, and we're touching into this greater presence. There's all these ways where those 3 words can mean different things for different contexts, and I like where my body work, my Rolfing, my everything has gone is much more, because I started going into biodynamic CranialSacral. It's been a lot more about getting into presence and letting the body unfold itself, letting presence kind of do its thing instead of trying to control that in a way.
Yeah, no, totally. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's probably a good time that I'll mention to those who are just tuning in. Those just tuning in right now, you've just turned dial on your radio. A radio? People born like last 20 years are like, what's a radio? Oh, on the iPad. Yeah. So I'm super happy to talk with you again, because for so many reasons. One is that our talk last week was great. It was like, when I would talk to people, I'd be like, I did my first podcast episode. It was perfect. It was everything I hoped it would be. And they're like, oh, that's so great. And I'm like, and then at the end, I realized I didn't hit record. And we can talk more about that later. But I'll just say that I'm talking again with Zohrab, who I know as Zo. And I don't know, do you prefer to be called Zohrab or Zo, or?
I like Zo. It's easier. It rolls off the tongue a little bit better.
Yeah, I do love the great Zohrab. I feel like it's like this like majestic, like the great Zohrab.
Just remove great.
Zo Ajani, who's a certified Rolfer, has a bachelor's of science in health and physiology, emphasis on pre-med and Ayurveda. He's also a certified Ayurvedic wellness consultant, 500-hour certified yoga teacher, and has been working in the medical field for over a decade as a certified surgical technologist. I'm always worried I'm going to say that wrong. And you have so many areas of specializing, including trauma, so much. It's just, it would take the whole podcast to talk about. And now you're in India, which is amazing. And you're working as a clinical Rolfer, and you have this way of combining Rolfing sort of, I guess, at least with traditional Ayurveda, maybe not necessarily in each session, but we'll talk about that. So how does that sound? Did I do an okay job summing you up?
You did really well. It was too good.
Yeah. I always find it interesting to how to, when we're in that situation of someone's announcing us, and it's like responding to that, like hearing yourself and hearing your accomplishments. Some people struggle with it. How is it for you?
Yeah. I'm proud of what I've done in my life. It took me a long time to realize where I am, and we should be very proud of our accomplishments, but we shouldn't use that as a character to live our lives. There are things that we've done, but it's just something that you can contribute to this planet. And after that's over, when you go to sleep, you're not that person. You just wake up and you put on those clothes and you go back and do things again and take them off and go home. we should be proud of what we've done, what everyone's done in their own lives.
Yeah, I think in the quarantine, some of the people are forgetting to put the clothes on. They're just getting up and being like, screw it, it's all right. And there's a lot of reasons I started this podcast. One is, I think, to share Rolfing, but also body work as a whole and practices that help people. One is to just have conversations with friends, and but I think it's really nice to. There's an old saying that you've probably heard. There are as many ways to Rolf as there are Rolfers, which makes it really difficult to explain to people when you meet someone. You're like, oh, I'm a Rolfer, and they're like, what's that? And you can be like, well, go on the Rolf website and you'll find a description. But of course, that doesn't really help them or even really define it. So, what is Rolfing to you?
Man, maybe we shouldn't start there. I'm just kidding. Rolfing to me, the definition it's changed a lot, and what I've experienced so far, in a short sentence, not making it too long. Rolfing is it's a series of hands-on sessions that enhance how you respond to life. That's it. Nice. It's simple. Anyone can understand it. You can be a intellectual and get it. You could be, just whatever, and you can understand it. You've never heard of it before, but you're like, yeah, I like to respond to life a little bit better, And
what is Ayurveda to you? Because I think some people listening may never even heard of Ayurveda.
Ayurveda is a holistic. It's a holistic approach to your well-being in all aspects of life. It covers every aspect of your life. And that's what Ayurveda is to me.
I love the fact that even the name, when you know Sanskrit, the name tells you what it is. It's the science of living, right?
Yeah.
I'm a big proponent in Ayurveda, and we talked about this before. But I don't have the nearly like you did. You were in Maharishi. Why don't you talk about how you got into Ayurveda, how you got into Rolfing? Where you
I was in Texas, and I was about to finish up at the University of Texas in Dallas pre-med, and I had just one more class left, and I was going to graduate and pursue medical school and all that good stuff. And just before the next semester, where I had just one class left, I you could say I had a midlife crisis really early. And
I hope not, because then you only have a few more years left to go.
No, it was like a rebirth to me. I felt very hollow and shallow, and everything that I kind of looked back at my life as at UTD, and I was like, I don't feel fulfilled. Why do I feel this way? And I was fighting with diagnoses of like ADHD and all these things, and so I was on like Adderall, but a generic version. It's like amphetamine salt combos, and I was on it for about 2 or 3 months, and it caused some side effects I didn't like narcolepsy a little bit. And I had one situation like that, and I immediately found an Ayurvedic practitioner. Never heard of Ayurveda, by the way. I mean, it's in the Indian household, but it's not the same when you go to an Ayurvedic practitioner, right? So she was the very first person who not only used herbs, but used yoga, used meditation, and in a way, some counseling, but not like a formal counseling. And so she helped me get off the meds within a month or two. And she showed me how to meditate. And there was one time where she just locked me in a room with a little candle about 7 feet away from me. And a diya, a little diya, which is like a container with a wick and some oil, and they light it. And she would leave me in there for hours, like maybe an hour or two. And I didn't understand why. And she was basically teaching me how to collect myself, not just the medications. So this Ayurveda, the introduction of Ayurveda, was not just herbs and lifestyle. It was like, how do you think? How do you live and respond in life in such a way where you're calm, you're content, and you're okay with what's happening around you? So after she did that, and I had an amazing experience. It literally changed my whole life. And it was like I got addicted to meditating. And I found Maharishi International University because of Oprah. She went there and did this whole thing. And I wanted to learn transcendental meditation. So I learned, and I got accepted to the university. I transferred last minute. And I said, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to integrate Ayurveda with, pre-medical sciences, and then I'll go to medical school. So that's how I ended up with Ayurveda.
And is that where you met Abigail too? Was at the school?
I did. I met the love of my life the first week of school, and it took 4 or 5 days, and one night where we just talked for God knows how long, and we tried to walk each other home back and forth, and it was late, so it was just an amazing experience. And ever since then, we've never separated. We've always been together.
Yeah, I mean, for those who don't know you, who've never, which I guess is probably a lot of people listening, you guys are just an amazing couple.
Thank you.
It's great, and I think it's great. Like, that adds a lot to that. Knowing, even though you only have one class to go, listening to the visceral sensations in the body, being like, this doesn't feel right. And, of course we never know what would have happened, but clearly, besides taking you on the journey it's taking you on, which has been great, is like meeting the love of your life. And when you're seen together, the way that you both glow off of each other is lovely. What I found with Rolfing is a lot of people who came to it never wanted to do it. They were in some sort of predicament or pain, and they got Rolfed, and it changed their life. And they said, I want to do this for other people. And it sort of sounds similar that Ayurveda was that similar for you. You got Ayurveda.
Yeah. Even Rolfing, man. Like, to be honest with you, like, Abigail gave me this book called Body Mind. You ever heard of it before? It's like Ken Devon. Ken, do you remember that book? He was like, I read that book. I couldn't put it down. And he talked about Rolfing. And literally, I think it was 2012. And Abigail planted the seed in my head with this Rolfing business thing. And I looked Ida Rolf up. And I just we're like, who are you? This lady, this woman, this like powerful, but humble and motherly, and she can teach you in a way that you've never learned before. And I swear, for a moment, I thought about changing my entire career. Like, I wanted to go to medical school and do all this stuff. And I'm like, you know what? Just screw it all. I'm going to go and become a Rolfer. I went to the Rolf Institute website, and I even looked up programs, but I didn't have the cash to do all of that. It wasn't that expensive then, but but it was a lot of money for me at that time. I was just like, well, I've got, so much going on. But there was something about, reading that book that changed my life, but I didn't listen to that part because I was so caught up with this, I have to be a doctor. I get to medical school and I'm just like, this sucks, and I, get out and go pursue Ayurveda. Then I find out that Rolfing is what's needed. Boom, I'm now a Rolfer. So it was full circle. And I had to go through these ridiculous events to come to where I am right now, I just recently saw a quote by Osho, Bhagavan Sri Ranjish. He's doing the wild thing. You've seen that.
The quote was, give me a Rolls Royce and I will take it.
He had another quote and I couldn't believe it. It was, every meditator should get Rolfed.
Really?
Yeah, it was a quote, every meditator should get Rolfed. And it was amazing for me to see something like that, to see the recognition of this field. And even if you're not a meditator, you should go through at least the Rolfing process, because it completely changes how you respond to life, how you are more present, how every activity that you're doing, you're so much more conscious, you're so much more aware of what you're doing, and you don't end up hurting yourself. You don't come to that point where, you know, you could be doing squats and you're like, you know what, I think I'm good. You know, you find a point where you create safety, and that safety allows you not to create injury, and, you know, you live a longer, healthier, more balanced, more present life. And, you know, who wouldn't want that? You know?
Yeah. So it brings you into balance.
Oh, totally. Even the herbs, like, you're ingesting these plants and they have a certain intelligence to them. They're creating a connection between you and this planet. And you become very present when you're taking an herb. You know, you've ever taken something bitter? I mean, you take that thing that's bitter, I promise you're not going to think about anything else. You become present right away, you know? So there's a quality of presence when you're taking in these herbs, when you're eating your food. There's a way to live. And I feel like when you go through the process of being rolfed, or you go to an Ayurvedic practitioner and you start taking care of yourself, you become so aware that you can't go back to the way that you were living, you know? So it's like, that's where Ayurveda came in. That's where I learned how to live Dinacharya. You know, how do you live your life? And then the best part is how can you help other people at the same time? So these two careers are like, not only is it helping other people, but it's also helping you, like, as a person. You're getting better every single day that you work with people. And what a gift that is, you know?
Yeah.
And what a gift that is. And why not? Why shouldn't I blend these two together if they've made such a huge impact on me? And yoga too, of course.
So as far as Ayurveda and Rolfing, what's your, how do you approach that? How are you doing that now? And how do you see that evolving maybe, or devolving, or, you know, what's that situation?
Yeah. So Rolfing is a series of sessions, right? You have like 10 to 12 sessions, and they're spread out a week apart. So like every week you get a session, and, you know, the Rolfer may assign some awareness exercise or movement exercise. And you need that time to integrate what's happening. Each session is designed that way. In Ayurveda, you have a process called Panchakarma. And I'm not going to go into what it all means, but what I am going to say is just a form of Ayurvedic bodywork. And it involves a very intricate process. So not only are you getting body work, but you're getting internal medicine as well. And there are factors that you look for in the Panchakarma process that are very important. And how to blend these two things is tricky, because one thing that is common between both of these systems is, what I mean by system is Panchakarma and Rolfing, is both of these processes, they weaken you. They actually weaken you just enough that you can integrate what the Rolfer has provided you, right? You feel fantastic after each session, no doubt. Even Panchakarma, you feel fantastic, but you have been weakened slightly. So those two things, the weakness, along with the time that you need to integrate the work, is very important. Now, the Panchakarma process is 21 days. So I have, as a Rolfer, 21 days to do a 10 series. So how in the world do I give enough time to each person, and I'm not overworking them, right? Because they're getting body work every single day. Yeah. So I have to be very careful about what I'm doing. The therapists have to be very careful about what I'm doing, because we need to be all on the same page. Some patients get 30-minute sessions, and I spread them like back to back, sometimes every other day. And it just depends on each person. Some people get a full hour. And I did a trial. So this is a research center. The hospital that I'm working at in South India, Sri Sarada Ayurvedic Hospital, is a research hospital. And the reason why I'm there is because Abigail and I got accepted by Dr. L. Mahadevan, MD, BAMS. He is an extremely profound Ayurvedic teacher. You can call him like the Acharya, the great teacher of this time. He's unbelievable the way that he can diagnose. He blends Western medicine with Ayurvedic medicine just seamlessly. You can't even tell what's going on. He's amazing. So I was fortunate enough to have access to CT scans, MRIs, all sorts of things, x-rays, you name it, blood work. We had a facility, if I wanted blood work, I can ask for it, so before sessions, I can do something and say, you know what, I want blood work after a session. I can do that. So in America, I don't have that privilege, but in India, because of the permission and grace of our teacher, I had access to these things. And so it was unbelievable to me to see the effects of what Rolfing does before somebody gets an MRI and what somebody does and then getting an MRI after, or getting an x-ray before and getting an x-ray after. So it was a complicated process, and I would do an hour session, sometimes 30 minutes, sometimes back to back. And if the patient was strong enough, which most Indians are, they can take body work like you can't believe. I mean, you can try to weaken the clients that were at the clinic. You just couldn't do it. They were so strong to take the work. Mm-hmm. So I felt good about what I was doing because, they were good. They weren't getting a cold. They didn't look weak. They were just like, let's keep going. It was like Neo in the Matrix. They were just like chugging away. It was unbelievable. So we had amazing results. I would take photos of before and after. I'd show Dr. Al Mahadevan, hey, this is what's going on. And he would be like, this is great. This is really good work. And when he saw that, he started increasing my workload. And Abigail was there with me at all times. She was checking in, taking pulse before and after, watching what the herbal protocols were. So everything was monitored. Blood pressure was taken every day. Everything, all that stuff was there. It's like you're in a hospital, but you're not. So that's how I was introduced to Rolfing and Ayurveda for the first time, to like do these two things together. And yeah, it was a lot. And so now I've come to a point where I'm going to work with Abigail, and we're going to create a program where each person goes through a 10 series or a 10 to 12 sessions. And at the same time, the person is going to get herbal protocols. They're going to utilize some Panchakarma methods, right? So they will do self-abhyanga, right? Mm-hmm. If they need a self-cleanse under the direct supervision of Abigail and myself. So all these things we're going to create, and they're going to be unique per person. Mm-hmm. So that's what we've gained from being at this hospital is how to integrate Ayurveda and Rolfing in such a way where the work that we do from outside in and from inside out is going to last even more. And they'll become hopefully more aware and respond to life in a more conscious way.
A few notes just for people listening. Abigail, we've mentioned, is your wife, but she is an Ayurvedic. she is an Ayurvedic consultant as well, correct?
Yeah, actually, in India, she's an Ayurvedic physician.
Okay.
She was hired by Dr. Al Mahadevan as a physician. She has her master's in complementary alternative medicine. She got her bachelor's in Ayurveda. She's, a 2-time Ayurvedic wellness consultant. She's been doing this, long before I met her. I mean, almost 2 years before I met her. So, and she's a wonderful artist, and she can sing, and God, she's very talented. So, and she's an astrologer. The list goes on.
The list goes on. No, I meant that more just so people aren't like, why is his wife coming in and doing these things when he's doing sessions? she's experienced as well. For me, when I think of Ayurveda, I think a lot of the very, very basics, right? And I think about what are the doshas, or like the constitutions that what everyone has. And so for me, when I'm working with people, a lot of times I'm thinking about what are the biopsychological traits that this person is showing, and like how do I help keep that into a better, a more aligned, a better balance between the three doshas, to try to figure out like what to do. And is that when you're working with people, do you keep that in mind as well?
Absolutely. So each person that comes in, so for example, a Vata type individual, is a bit leaner. And you can tell by when there's not much like tissue around the joints, that's usually somebody who's a Vata quality. You can see their bones a little bit more. Their skin is a little bit thinner. They don't look emaciated, but they just don't look, you know, like they have a lot of cushion around joints. So that's one thing you can look at. Pitta people are like your kind of tailored body. You know, they've got this musculature tone to them. And then you have Kapha people who are kind of well-rounded. You can say, yeah, big bone.
Why are you looking at me, man?
And now, they're not obese. It has nothing to do with obesity. They just look like they're, you know, they've got a good amount of flesh that is protecting them. Their joints are very well protected. So each individual requires a different kind of touch. Right now, there's a lot of talk about, you know, you don't have to touch. You can be very light, you know, for neurodermal modulation, for any kind of neurovascular work. And that's working with delicate things. But in terms of Vata type of people, you have to be a little bit more gentle and a bit more light-handed. And then you've got these Pitta people where you have to increase your touch a little bit. And with Kapha people, you may have to go a little bit more deeper. Deeper doesn't mean more pressure. It just means your intention has to be clear with what you're doing, because these people need to feel what's going on. Because they have tissue that is thicker than normal people. So it doesn't mean that they can't respond to it. It just means they may not have the capacity yet to respond to the level of the superficial areas. So you have to train Kapha people to take light touch, right? Meet me at the superficial layer. So I definitely look at Vata type and Pitta type and Kapha type of people. What's also important is you can break down your touch also with each individual. Vata type of touch is light. Pitta type of touch is a little deeper. Kapha type of touch is a little deeper, even deeper. So even if you're Pitta, I may use a Kapha type of touch, or I may use a Vata kind of touch. I may challenge you in that way. And this is actually really amazing, because if you take the doshas, which is Vata, Pitta, and Kapha, and for those who don't understand what dosha is, think of the humors in the body, right? So you have Vata humor, Pitta humor, and Kapha humor, and just systems, integral systems in the body that sustain and maintain who you are, create homeostasis. If I take the doshas and I break them down, they have subcategories. So Pitta has 5 subcategories. Vata has 5 subcategories. Kapha has 5 subcategories. And each of those subcategories correlate with locations of the body. So anything from belly button down is Vata. Anything from the belly button to the xiphoid process is Pitta. Anything from the chest up is Kapha. And just imagine that, plus you split it up even more. So every time I am working on somebody, if I'm working on someone's leg, direction matters for me. If I go upward, I'm moving Vata in an upward manner, meaning after I'm done with this patient, this person should feel lighter, right? So if I'm working on this guy's right leg, a patient's right leg, and I'm moving in an upward direction, I'm moving Vata upward, the person should get off the table and say, I feel lighter on the right side. And you can do the same experiment and move downward. If I move Vata downward, if I take my direction, move down the leg, they're going to be more grounded. They're going to feel a little heavier. They'll be their step will be a little bit more. They'll sense it more. They'll be in contact more. They won't have that bounce usually. So this is actually very important, because Dr. L. Mahadevan was telling me in the Panchakarma process, when you move in an upward direction from the feet towards the crown of the head, the person automatically will feel lighter. Automatically. If you move from the head down, they will feel more grounded. So if you have a client, if I have a client who's very airy-fairy, it's very kind of deranged in their thoughts, you can say scattered. You could even say ADHD, but that's not the best term to use. You can just say they're not fully, engaged with life. They're just kind of all over the place. I want to bring them down. So everything that I do, I'm going to work in a downward manner. And the moment they get off the table, they'll feel grounded, right? Their response to life will be like, whoa, I'm here right now. I'm not in the clouds. It's also like G and G prime, but we can talk about that.
Yeah, I was thinking
later.
about G and G prime and palintonicity when you were talking about that, but we can talk later about that.
Yeah. So these are important things that I've learned to utilize in my Rolfing sessions. And also, you talked about biodynamic CranialSacral Therapy, and you're feeling for the patient. You're allowing the patient to unravel, and you're being more present.
Mm-hmm.
The same thing is done in Ayurveda when you do Nadi Vigyan. When you take the pulse of an individual, and not just like, I'm taking the radial artery, but the radial artery is the site where you can take the pulse and you can feel the state of the person's like physiology, which dosha is high, what is their mental state, what's going on with their organs, how is their blood pressure, everything, the viscosity, everything can be checked, which gives me direction to where to start sometimes. Sometimes if I don't know where to start, I'll feel their pulse for about a minute or two, and it'll be like, I'm starting here. This is where I need to go, because I can feel Vata, Pitta, Kapha, and those subdoshas have a location. So if something is out of balance, I go there first, and I work in that way. So
that's really nice.
That's a way of like, yeah.
I know in biodynamic for me, Cranial, I will sometimes if I have a client, it's the first time and I don't know what's really going on, I can just sit and just sort of sit for sometimes 5 or 10 minutes. And then it's just like, oh, okay, I need to go to that spot. That spot over there is where it is. And of course you can go there via actually going there, take your hands off, or you can have your intention go there or working with the fascia. Yeah, it's really interesting. I never thought about it in the way that you just described it from an Ayurvedic perspective and more, and that's really beautiful, and it's a really good tool.
Yeah, because because I check it before and I check it after. So it gives me even if the person doesn't feel a big difference, I can check to see if anything has changed. And if things have changed, I know they're integrating, and I don't have to, question them too much. I can just be like, okay, you're going to be fine. You'll feel better in 2 days or 3 days. So
I feel like you teaching a 1-day class for Rolfers on how to use Ayurveda for tracking. That tracking at the end is so important about when you see people and you've done a session, they're great and they get off the table and then they're just sort of they're either collapsing, they're too heavy and they're too grounded, or they're too they're too G, or they're too G primary. You see them get off the table and they're literally their head is 5 feet in the sky, just floating, and you're bringing some Ayurvedic protocols into how to help find their the homeostasis.
How to not do too much work. And sometimes I feel their pulse in between a session. If I feel something's different, I'll go and check and see, what's going on. And
So I imagine, people are people. So working in India must be exactly the same as working in the US, right?
No, not at all. Absolutely not the same at all. It's, so I was born in Mumbai, and I can speak Hindi. I can understand Hindi. I can understand Gujarati and Kutchi and a few other languages up north India. But when you come to the south, it's Tamil, and Malayalam, and there you can't even pick up anything. It's a completely different world, a completely different culture, completely different food. So it was very challenging. It took me about a month of frustration and loss of hope because I couldn't ask for certain kinds of movements. I couldn't do the things that I was taught that told me that if you do this, it's going to make a big difference. So it took me about a month, almost 2 months, to really understand how to work with the clients here, some patients were amazing. The response was amazing. They spoke English and they were more attuned with themselves. They understood what their body was. But a lot of them, the majority of the patients I worked with, they had no idea what this body is, and why it's so important to feel this thing that you're carrying around with you all the time. And so it was very challenging to get past that obstacle.
Yeah, and we talked about again this before, but my experiences when I was working in India, and it sort of ties into what you were talking earlier about like training people on touch. For me, like teaching, like the people that a lot of the Indians that I worked with just wanted hard and strong, and they wanted me to do for them. It was such a sense of you were the person up here. I kept thinking of relating it to the guru sort of way of like, you're the person with knowledge, therefore you do to me. And I kept trying to get them to be like, no, I have knowledge so that we do together. So you do for yourself later on. And that was really, in my realm, that was really, really challenging for that, as well as just teaching them, like, it doesn't have to be painful,
You
find this,
it's like, you have to see what they're exposed to. Like at the clinic and the hospital that I was working in, they had a marma therapist and a physiotherapist. And so all they did was treat where they were painful. And each treatment was 15, 20 minutes maximum, not even more than that. And all they wanted was results immediately. Like, we don't care how much we have to pay. I want results right now. And with Rolfing, it just doesn't work that way, and they really, when I worked with them, they were like, why is this taking so long? It's almost like I was being asked to like Rolf their problems away. And that's why I think Ida Rolf gave priority to educating. And that's what I had to do for a month. It's just like, I had to educate the people, they weren't used to that attention, like to get an hour's worth of work where we're both working together and, you're in control of the session. You don't see that. And so, there's a learning curve, and I think that's important, that you have to get learned how to be Rolfed.
Yeah. And how do you teach someone how to be Rolf when you have trouble speaking their language?
I only do half their body. I will do half their body and I'll make them get up and they'll walk. They won't speak. They won't know like full on English, but I'll have a translator and I'll do one side and I'll make them get up and walk and they'll feel a difference. And they'll be like, you can see it in their face, their eyes. They're just like, whoa, what in the world is like, it's like they just like were like a new experience has just come up, And so I look at them and I kind of shake my head and they shake their head and we get back on the table and we get back to work. And so sometimes I just do one side and I leave them. Sometimes I only do one side for the whole day and I come back the next day, do the other side. Because I'm so busy. I have to do, I'm like, all right, you only get session one, but only on the right side. Come back the next day and they feel a big difference and I do the other side and then bring them back to, a normal, what do you call it? A normal plane for them.
Yeah. No, it's interesting. I think of like a big part of my practice is questioning. And so asking people, what are you noticing? How, and especially if we do one side, what are you noticing on the different, what are you noticing between the two sides? What are you sensing in your body? Coming from that Genlinian approach. And it's really interesting because if you can't say that, it's like, well, how do you communicate when you can't say it? And your approach is really interesting. It's just like, I can't tell them how do they feel. So I leave them in a state that they will definitely feel that they'll start to build that awareness more into themselves. It's an interesting way of doing it.
It's nonverbal change. Like they will say the next day, I feel a difference on my right side. They'll say difference, right side difference, left side problem. And so then I know, okay, what we did yesterday worked. And then they become more patient, and they're willing and they're aware. They're not falling asleep on it. They're riding that wave in between sleep and awareness. They're alert. So
anything more you want to share, either about yourself, about Rolfing, about Ayurveda, about anything at all?
Before you get into self-care, what I mean by self-care is like hands-on body work, either with a chiropractor, either with whoever that is body oriented. Make sure that you are watching what is being eaten. So when what you're consuming is going to have a direct impact on how much benefit you will gain from the chiropractor or from the osteopath or from whomever you go to get your body work, from a massage, anything. So before you start doing these things, change just a little bit. It could be one thing. Stop eating potato chips, and then go to the chiropractor and see what that does to you. Like, all right, I'm going to eliminate one thing, diet is huge. And if you don't watch what you're consuming, the benefits can be altered. That's about it. So.
Yeah. It's actually the reason I sort of started studying more into Ayurveda was because of that. I think I may have told you this story before, but I was at a retreat center that whenever I go there, I'd always get just tons of mucus. I'd always be allergic to something. And I was taking a yoga and Ayurveda course. And I went up to we had a guy named Dr. John Douillard. He's sort of a celebrity in Ayurveda. And I said, Dr. John.
He's in Colorado, isn't he?
He's in Colorado, yeah. I ran into him a few times when I was at the Rolf school. I ran into him at the Todd's Coffee because his shop's around the corner. I was like, hey, Dr. John. But he's the one that kind of, he inspired me. I was like, hey, I'm always sick here. Like, what do you think? And he just looked at me and he's like, don't eat dinner or just have like a light soup for dinner. And I was like, and I was just so like, come on, like that's not going to make any difference. But I was like, okay, why not? I'm here. So I skipped dinner that night. And I woke up the next morning and all of my mucus was gone, just gone. And I was like, okay, there's something there's something to this. I'm very scientific in my thinking, but when I have an experience that I can't explain Western scientifically, experience will always trump it. So diet is super. And I notice that when I eat more spicy food, for example, because I have a high pitta and I love spicy, when I cut out spicy food for a few months one time, and my speaking got slower, my mentality got slower, my hormones got less like crazy, and it was like, whoa, okay, there's what you eat definitely has regulatory aspects on your body for sure. Yeah. So aztribe.com is how people can find more about you.
aztribe.com.
And Abigail as well. And I would highly recommend people who have, if something has sort of sparked their interest in this, to send Zo an email. He's a very welcoming guy. And as he's an amazing educator. And I think that you are. I mean, I love. We lived in the same house for 2 weeks, overlapping, and I just loved. I felt like we both were always sharing information, not talking down, and that was really important. Because I had other roommates that would just be like, "Well, I'm in a higher course. I'm talking down. You don't know anything. You're only in this phase." And you were very much an educator, which is like, let me share this information. If it resonates with you, I'm happy. And if it doesn't, enjoy your day.
It's all about being inclusive, and it can be easy to be exclusive because you think you have something, but being inclusive actually gives you more creative power, and so the more you share, the more you can create. The less you share, you get stuck in your creative process. So that's why being with Dr. L. Mahadevan, he's like an open book. A lot of Ayurvedic teachers aren't like that. They won't share everything. And so, he's very inclusive, and that's important.
That's great. Yeah. All right. Well, Zo, thank you for your time.
Thank you, Andrew. It was a pleasure and an honor.
Thanks again to Zo for his time and wisdom in today's episode of Touching into Presence. You can find out more or get in contact with Zo at aztribe.com. We appreciate your listening to our podcast and made with love, and look forward to sharing our next episodes as they unfold. Have a lovely day wherever you may be.